Macroverse, and we are here for a continuation of the Reverse event that we had this past weekend. So if you missed what we did this past weekend, the whole point of that event and now the continuation of that event, because frankly we had so much fun, we just have to keep it going, is to kind of take the spotlight from the Web3 collectible tokenomic side of NFT projects and kind of shift more towards the storytelling, art, creative. Kind of my feeling is like, why do we care about these worlds that are being created in this space? And kind of having a chance to dive into conversations with the creators like Matt here, and talk a little bit more about the inspiration and the background. A lot of the things being created in this space, it's not just about this new technology. It's really a way of bringing a long standing passion to life, something that many of us have been wanting to create for a long time, and seeing this as an opportunity to do that. So I've blathered on for too long. Matt, tell us a little bit about you to get started.
Yeah, I mean, everything you're saying is totally spot on, though. Like, I definitely wouldn't be able to be here doing this without being a part of Web3. But so basically, my background is I work in animation as a storyboard artist, and like a huge inspiration for me has always been creating my own work, but especially within animation. It's like the barrier to create your own things is just so high and requires so much money. I was just like immediately drawn into this space and what it can do. And currently, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it a lot today, we're almost done with the first issue of the Dino Baby comic, which I'm so incredibly excited about and proud of, and I think is going to be really, really cool. But yeah.
Well, actually, before we talk about the comic, I mean, your background in animation. I mean, give us your kind of secret origin story, like where this started for you. I mean, I've been drawing since I was 2 years old. Is that kind of a similar trajectory? Like, give us the whole background.
Yeah, so I think it's actually a pretty interesting story. So like, I have been drawing since I was extremely young. Drawing my own comics, creating my own stories, creating my own plushes since I was a kid. The interesting thing is I did not go to art school. I went to a business and engineering school because my parents were like, you're going to starve. Like, you can't be an artist. And that whole time, it's like my entry into animation is this very weird, like, in through the side door sort of thing. So like, graduate college, and the entire time through college, me and my friends, we created our own screen printing studio, like built our own screen printing machine out of our own press, like out of wood, to get our first jobs, use that money, build up, create this whole like screen printing company. And we do that for a long time and, make a decent amount of money. I'm from Texas, moved to Austin, Texas. I'm working in a screen printing warehouse, this big facility. Me and my friend, like, he comes in after work, and we're like, they have an industrial curing machine. So like, it's just basically this giant heater that heats the, I'm totally blanking on what the inks are called that they use to use for screen printing, that are basically like nuclear strength, but it's a 400-degree heater. And like, we'd made these Adventure Time shirts, and just because we were big fans, and we were putting them through the heater, and the stock guy who I'd like talked to a little bit, and he's like, dude, are you Adventure Time fans? And I was like, yeah. He's like, I do the music for Bravest Warriors. It's like their like little weird web show that they were doing that was by Pendleton Ward. I was like, dude, no way. And like, it just happened at the exact right time in my life, because like, working at a screen printing factory was fun, but it's a minimum wage job. I was doing like basic, like the most design grunt kind of work you can imagine. So I was getting ready to go to grad school, and around this time, I meet him. He's like, dude, because I was going to New York at the time. He's like, dude, you should reach out to the Frederator guys while you're there. And I did. And like, I was going to New York to get a design master's degree, got an internship at Frederator. And like, while I was at the internship, eventually had to, make the choice. I was like, I'm going to go start grad school. I can't be an intern anymore. And they were basically like, we're not going to tell you to drop out of grad school, but if you do, you have a job with us. And I never looked back.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, they're a really great company. They have an open pitch policy. So like in my youth and naivete, I was like, I can totally make something better than what they're doing. And like, of course, but like I pitched and I created my own pitch and it went really well. And like by doing that, even though that never led to anything, like that opened doors at Nickelodian, and like eventually through a completely different project got my own development deal at Nickelodian. And like it's been a weird non-linear path into animation.
Yeah,
but it's been very interesting.
So I feel like I should know the answer to this, but I don't. So I mean, in the animation world, like what has your role typically been? Are you actually doing animation? Are you more on the storyboard character design side? Yeah. Like where's your home there?
I'm a storyboard artist.
Yeah.
Most recently I was at Cartoon Network working on a feature film that unfortunately no one will ever see because of I don't know if you've heard of merger drama, but
that's miserable.
It is really terrible. I like just yesterday my friend I guess someone tweeted that like RIP Cartoon Network, and all of Twitter is like thinking that Cartoon Network is dead forever. I don't think that's the case.
I really hope it's not, but yeah.
Like things do look pretty bleak right now, but I feel like that's a little overblown. So I write and I storyboard, and just like I wouldn't say I'm an animator, but like just the way that storyboards are done today, it's so posed out that it's one step below animation. And they like one of the projects they were on there basically like they're pretty much going to trace over your boards.
Right. So you're really making like it's really kind of delivering an animatic, which for anyone that doesn't know is like a blueprint for the different scenes and shots and camera angles and staging and timing, really, for the whole. Yeah, that's very cool. So it's interesting because I've got some experience in animation as well, and it's like I think it's hard for people to wrap their head around all the different moving parts that go into even what you would consider low quality animation, let alone a feature or something higher.
It's like you go on Twitter and people are like, "This is lazy animation." I'm like, that does not exist. All animation is 24 frames. Like it's like it is. People, the stuff people think is lazy, people are burning themselves out making. It's wild.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now I'm curious. Like this has led me down a path of conversation I didn't necessarily expect, but so you kind of transition into the animation world. Doing this pitch gets you some attention as a creator, as a world builder, as a storyteller. You get a development deal at Nickelodeon. And so in that development deal, I assume you're continuing to, come up with ideas and pitch those ideas. So how did that kind of lead to Dino Babies, and ultimately kind of like, what was the moment in all of that where you're like, oh, there's this NFT Web3 thing happening, and instead of like pushing down the Nickelodeon traditional road, I'm going to go over here and do this thing?
I mean, there's not like a direct path. So like I basically, to kind of as quickly as possible kind of finish off that story, like I'd created a storyboard pitch for Frederator. Like everyone at Frederator that I showed loved it, got to the very top guy, and he was like, no, this isn't it. But like just through like I consider it like bullheaded persistence, like showing it to everyone I can, like wind up at Nickelodeon, pitch it to Nickelodeon, and they kind of say the same thing, like, this is not for us, but we like you. Do you have any other ideas?
Yeah.
And I was like, yes. Like I go that day, send them this long email about like this idea that I have, and they're like, they literally had like a 5-word response, like, interesting, sounds interesting. Like, it was just the most dismissive thing ever. And I was like, well, this is the end of that. And then like it was like 2 or 3 months later, I get another extremely short email. It's like, hey, we're not as busy now. Do you still have that idea? And like in that amount of time, I totally revamped the idea, like really tightened it up, done a little bit of concept work, and come in and I pitch it. And like the head of development at the time was out on pregnancy leave, so I was just pitching to these 2 junior executives.
Right.
And after I pitched, like the younger junior executive was like, yes, so like we won it. And the other guy was like, no, we can't do that. So like the point of this story was like that led to the development deal, and was like really, I don't want to say it was like premature in my career, but it like really sparked this fire. Because like the typical path is you kind of like break in, you become like maybe a storyboard revisionist, you become a storyboard artist, you become a director. Then after that, there's something called storyboard supervisor. And like from then you kind of like create this reputation in the industry, and you get, if you have an interesting enough pitch, then maybe you can get your own show. Like it's so extremely rare and so extremely hard. I feel like I totally cheated the system by getting in there very early.
Yeah.
The downside of that was, it's like the downside of getting everything you ever wanted is like when it gets taken away. And like it did get canceled. And that was extremely devastating at the time, but now like with hindsight, I'm like, that was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because that's really what set me off on this journey. Is like, I now know that I can do this. Let me go do it better and keep trying. And like that, through kind of that same process of like creating these ideas, pitching to these companies while working in animation and getting like my fundamental skills up and being able, like, at that point I couldn't do everything by myself. Now I can, and I still have these original pitches that like is a fairly, it's a more rare thing than you expect. And maybe you see that with like the comic side of stuff. It's like you would think being around all these creative people, like everyone would have this like story they're desperately wanting to tell and like this creative ethos, but it's fairly rare.
Well, I think it's interesting because I think there is a correlation, I would say, across kind of every media type. But I think that the thing that is interesting to me about animation, and I think this is generally true in comics, it's kind of like every time you move up the production bar, then there's another layer of kind of complication to like be able to go and make something. So comics a little easier to like make than animation. Animation's a little easier to make than most, live action. It's kind of like, levels of complexity going up. But I think one thing the animation industry does a lot better than film and television is there is at least a clearly stated path for like how you actually go from the bottom to the top. And then it's kind of up to you to like, can you be that person that is able to walk that path? But that's a little there. It's funny, and in film and TV, like that doesn't exist in the same way. It's kind of like you could be a PA that turns around and develops and creates a show, or you can be there for 50 years and never get that opportunity. So I think that is something that I think if people are looking at kind of the traditional way of creating media, it is interesting. And like I went to college with the creators of Avatar.
Oh no way!
Wow. And similarly though, like they broke in as in animation. I remember Mike DiMartino and our friends, and he was working at MTV Animation on like their Liquid Television block. And then, went to Nickelodian, and then they had this kind of similar opportunity to just go like, oh, we're developing internally. So, anybody that wants to pitch stuff. And then they were that rare team that had that thing that, became, super, super successful. But I think just the fact that opportunity exists, I think is pretty cool. But then I think now kind of flipping to, what we're all so excited about in the NFT Web3, version of all of this is, I think, now it's like, okay, that's awesome that's there. And I believe ultimately all these things are going to just kind of work together.
Yeah.
But now it's like a new way of being able to take those skills and, create something that you really do have kind of complete say over. And that also can now include, other people in a way that, perhaps it wasn't possible before. So I want to kind of start shifting in that direction, but give us, as we start to head there, like, what is the genesis of Dino Babies? Is that, where did that idea come from? And maybe segue into like, what is the kind of story or the concept?
So like the genesis is somewhat similar. Like I was actually pitching at Nickelodeon again, this completely separate idea, and they were like it was a teen action drama idea, and they were like, I'd been in there for like 5 or 6 pitches, like it looked like it was, fingers crossed, actually about to happen.
Yeah.
Last minute, they're like, sorry, we're not doing teen stuff anymore. Better luck next time. And like, it's just kind of my creative ethos. It's like I could sit around crying about it, or let me come up with a new thing.
Yeah.
And like, so that was really the impetus for creating Dino Babies. I was just like, I could be devastated, or I could, channel my creativity into something. And like I always try and pull as much from my own life as possible, which I know sounds weird for an idea like Dino Babies, but like the concept came from when I was very young. I think I was like maybe in kindergarten or first grade. My whole family was about to go to a water park in Texas. And like I was chasing my older brother around the house, and he slammed a door in my face, and the doorknob like smashed my eye. And like I couldn't go to the water park. I had to go to the hospital and get stitches. So in order to like make it up to me and my dad on the way home, we stopped by the dollar store and got these like little dino toys. I actually have a couple in my window here. I brought them from home, like these little dollar store, like dinosaur toys.
Very familiar to me, actually.
Really? And I would carry them around in an egg carton. Like each little thing would sit in this little egg carton, and that just, as a kid, that became their spaceship. And like when I was like, I need an idea, like that just popped back into my head, and I was like, how does creativity work? I'm not sure, but like just the name Dino Babies in space, I was like, that is so absurd. Like there's something there that I can work. Like there's this spark of creativity that like it just like stuck in my brain. I was like, I could turn this into, like, as crazy and ridiculous as this name is, like I can turn this into something legitimately like entertaining and fun and really unique.
Yeah. That's really cool. So, okay, so you got this kind of germ of an idea. And by the way, I think all the best stories are something that you pull from some version of yourself. It's like a total side note, but I always tell people that are, starting to write and like develop stuff that it's like, your voice is your experience, like the lens that you personally can bring to whatever story you're telling. It's like, I don't think there is either visually as an artist or as a writer. It's like, finding your style, finding your voice is really just your lens on the world, and your lens on the world is your experience. So whether you're writing about Dino Babies or, zombies in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, there's something you that has to,
you have to find that part of yourself that you can put into the story, or else it's just like an interesting idea.
Yeah, exactly. So that's cool. All right, so you got this germ of an idea, and then where's your intersection with kind of NFTs, Web3, and how does that kind of come together into like, I'm gonna do it this way?
Yeah, so one of my best friends since we were very, very young. He'd been like kind of trying to get me into NFTs for a while. And at this point, I was just like so busy with work and everything. I was like, I'm not sure. Like, cause he was like, you kind of have to do it full time. Like, you have to be ready at a moment's notice to mint and like do all this stuff. I was like, this is already so complicated. Like, I don't know if I can do that. But then he was like, one day he was like, dude, one of my friends is looking to start a project and they need an artist. And basically I was like, no way. I don't want to make art for someone else.
Right.
But he was like, let me just send them your website and we'll see what they say. I was like, yeah, sure. That's cool. And they're like, basically like, we love what you do. We can take your idea and help you market it. Because I was basically like, I don't want to create, I don't really see myself as like an artist for hire.
Yeah.
I was like, but they were like, we can help you bring this to life. And like, you know, well, artists, like that's like the dream, right?
Words we're all waiting for. Yes.
It's like the Godfather. It's like an offer you can't refuse. It's like I couldn't refuse that, you know.
Yeah.
And like so I was fairly well versed in the Web3 space. Like even though I wasn't like minting and all of that, like I really kept up to date with my friends who like my one friend David, who he got all of our friends into it, and like I was in all the group chats and like I wasn't minting or stuff, but like, you know, I was just there to have fun.
Yeah.
So I was already pretty well versed, but there was a learning curve, and like it just very quickly became aware as like this is a way to really make this happen and like to like have finally like a modicum of control over this insane creative process that's like really driven by the corporate money. It's like you can't make money without, you can't make animation without a corporation. And I was like, finally I can maybe circumvent that to whatever extent is possible. I'm gonna try.
Yeah, very cool. So that was so okay. So like the magic words appeared. You got the offer that couldn't be refused. And then I know you're working on a comic, and we'll certainly talk about that.
Yeah.
But you started with a collection of characters, right? Or
yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, so it started with a storyboard that like I'd already pitched around a little bit, but I hadn't pitched around too much because I try to be like very strategic and like only pitch things when they're ready. So like I had this storyboard, this group of characters, and like basically what I think was a really great foundation for the start of a show. But that was pretty much it. Like it wasn't that developed at that point. And basically my two partners, Camilo and AJ, they're like, we love this weird little blue guy. I like him too. It's like, that's Ziggy. It's like we want him to be the basis of this.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, that's perfect. And like through doing this, like I had like just my thought on development in general is like, I'm not the kind of creator that knows every single thing going in. Like I want to leave space because like even with this comic, like finishing the first issue, like halfway through I rewrote the ending. It's like I want to leave space because the best ideas come when you're actually drawing it, I personally think. So it's like leaving space for that. So I was like, all these characters, like their traits, their personalities were like just sketches at that point, but going through this whole process and like creating all this artwork, they've come like really fleshed out in a really fun way that I don't know that I would have had the ability and chance to do if it wasn't for this.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, so actually that leads me to what was that initial pitch? Like, so we've got Dino Babies in space. We've got, you know, the kind of the inspiration for it. What's the kind of germ of the story or the germ of the idea?
So basically the original pitch was like this. It actually doesn't, it barely has the Dino Babies in it at all. It's like it starts on, and it's actually what became I took all the merch caps myself. They are coming soon, I promise.
Thank you. Is one of me. Oh man, that's a good comment.
I have like all this merch, and like I will answer this question. I will come back to it. I won't forget it. But like creating, like we have like the dino eggs. Like each NFT that you own creates a dino egg every day, and like the point is like you use that dino egg to buy merch, and it's like finding a way to merge that with like a Shopify store has been surprisingly difficult.
Oh man,
you almost have it. I like have my finger. I keep saying it's like I think we finally have it, and the merch will be available. But I'm like,
if
you can get it for free. Why would you? Like, I can make it for sale if you guys want, but like you're gonna get it through DinoX.
We learned over the weekend talking to the Pixel Vault team, like the answer to all of these questions is soon. Yeah. But man, the integration, like some of the stuff that's so crazy is like the integration between like Web3 tooling and just what seems like it should be incredibly simple, like very well developed Web2 stuff just is incredibly challenging. It is literally reinventing the wheel every single time sometimes, and it
really is. And that's like I can do every aspect of this project except for that. So you know, one day, like that day is coming soon. Like we have 1,000 plushes coming to my garage. It's like it's going to be a real thing.
All right, but back to the story. So
we're back to the story. Like I have like this storyboard pitch that became like the pilot script. Like I fleshed it out to become the pilot script, which is now issue 1 of the comic, and I'll kind of talk about how that works and all that. But basically it was like it's like the cold open of the first episode. It's Dino President. He's like with his like quote unquote mistress, and like basically this Dino agent comes to tell him, like give him this file to reveal it's like the comet is going to hit the Earth in like 57 minutes. It's like, and he's like, what? No, like, no, it's like, you know, total politician, like denying, like, that's not going to happen. It's not going to be that bad.
Don't
and
look
like,
up.
We reveal it's like, it actually is going to be that bad. And like, she goes over and like reveals this whole dino scientist laboratory that's like, we've been working behind the scenes because you are completely useless to save the dino race. And like they created like it's the ship is called Uncle Terry, and it's like a pterodactyl shaped spaceship that's like that they're gonna put the Dino Babies on and send them off into space to carry on their people. And like that's the cold open, like kind of setting up like there's like an environmental subtext, a political subtext, and then like a like kind of setting into motion like all the bigger sci-fi ideas in the show. And like that was the original pitch.
That's
like
great.
Just that like little hook of like, oh, there's a lot of interesting ideas. And
so is this a kind of dinosaur civilization kind of somewhat set, you know, I don't know, hundreds of thousands or millions of years ago, I guess, in like our Earth dinosaurs, and then the group that's made it off planet to go survive? That's awesome.
Basically, it's like it we only touch on it very briefly because like this my creative ethos is that like in the age of streaming, I think a lot of creatives and a lot of shows are like, oh, we have 10 episodes to tell this story, like let's you know, I even had one exec was like, maybe the Earth doesn't get destroyed, and they like, I was like, no, it's like we got to get them into space as soon as possible. So like we don't spend that much time with the dinosaurs on Earth, and like really there's only like a couple drawings where it's like kind of establishing like this is the dino, this is 65 million years ago as you understand it, with the one twist that there's a secret group of dinosaurs that built like this high-tech laboratory, and it deviates from history there, and it never looks back, and the Earth gets destroyed and they escape.
It's great. That's all you need. It's great.
Yeah.
All right, so then we're off into space, and then are we now kind of with the adventures of these guys as they find their way in the galaxy?
Yeah, basically like that. This was the reason to create the comic. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to create the comic, but like basically everyone that we'd pitched to was like, we want to see episode 9 where the whole crew's assembled. They're in, quote unquote episode 9. Like everything is in place. This is just like a random episode. So like that's what kind of slowed down the process of the comic. I was like, okay, let me write and storyboard out a whole quote unquote episode 9. And we did, but like, to answer your question, yeah, it's like they get into space at the end of issue 1, or what I hope will be episode 1. Yeah,
that's awesome. Are you at a point where you can show us a little bit of what the comic looks like?
I can. So like, I am hoping this weekend I will finish drawing every single page. I'm just gonna pull up some. Can you guys see my screen?
Oh, sorry. There we go. Yeah.
Yep.
Tell me when you're ready to share it.
Okay. Yeah, we're ready.
Okay.
So basically, like the first page is a 2-page spread. Let me actually pull it up here so you can get the actual full effect of this. Where is it? Here we go.
Nice.
So this is like the first 2-page spread. Like we kind of start credits page, all that, all that good stuff. Comet flying towards Earth, like hurtling towards Earth, flying past dinosaurs, curving through like curving through the dino space, and like what turns out to be a misdirect. And this is what I'm talking about, like literally 1 page of like typical prehistoric scenes on Dino President in this kind of like secret oasis.
Yeah.
He's like having this romantic conversation where Dino's secret agent named Agent Miranda comes in and like gives him the file revealing that the comet is actually hurtling towards Earth. And she's like, this is an extinction level event like bikes we've never seen. And it's like, he's like, of course this would happen in an election year. And she's like, this is where she reveals, like, she boops a little leaf, bringing up this like little display, fingerprint scanner, boom, like opens this door. I actually have the lettered pages here somewhere. I can pull them up too. Nice. But they reveal the secret dinosaur lab. He's like, what on earth? They're walking through. She's kind of giving like the expositional dialogue of like, we've done all this in spite of you, and hopefully really funny and good dialogue. I think we've worked really hard to make it as entertaining and joke heavy as possible.
I mean, it looks gorgeous, by the way. I mean, just
thank you. Thanks so much. And like, this is the reveal of Uncle Terry, their spaceship, and he's basically, wow, when do we leave? It's like, not us or them. And this is our first shot of the Dino Babies. And so like for the comic pitch, the first half of almost a little less than half now, because I added a couple extra pages for like a cool action sequence at the end. Like this is basically Agent Miranda is giving all this expositional kind of spoilery dialogue, like foreshadowy dialogue, and Dino President, being an idiot, isn't listening. He's like looking at the babies. He's like, green, my favorite color, my favorite flavor. Like, what are you doing? And like we cut to, he's about to eat one of them, punch him in the stomach, like spit him out. and like this sets off, like this is kind of the final colored page that's done, kind of like the cliffhanger of the comic pitch, where he's like, take those Dino Babies to the kitchen and like tell them I like them extra crispy or whatever. Like, and they're like, what? That's like the cliffhanger ending. But then all these they're I have the lettered versions too. Like these are all.
It's fine. I'm enjoying you telling us the
stories. But basically, Dino's escape. Like they meet the janitor. His name is Crick. He's like, his head done got cricked, and he just like works at the facility. And they kind of like hatch this plan to escape. That kind of just like we can have a fun moment with the Dino Babies, like showing off their personalities and kind of warming ourselves up to them. And like my thought is like, give the audience a moment to be like, what would their lives have been like if the world didn't end? Like that, like kind of like emotional beat. And just introducing all the characters before before everything goes wrong, basically. And they're kind of just like weaving their way through like the base here, just like having this like goofy conversation, basically like like life could be good, and then immediately on the screen they're like, this dumb idiot stole the babies. And like basically they're like, I forget exactly what the exact line is, but he's like, he tells all the security guards to get their anti-janitor bazookas and like apprehend him, destroy the janitor, and bring the babies back. And like they're immediately met like by this dinosaur force that launches a bazooka at them. And like here's where we kind of have this cool like spotlight the dinos special abilities with like a cool action scene. They just like basically destroy the dino security guards. And these are all, I just finished these last night.
Awesome.
Here's where we're at now. But I think
I've seen this. Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, and for maybe this is many people who have never made comics before, like what's so cool about this to me is like you really see like the whole process almost on one page here. So
it's like, you can see these light little red drawings of like the truly hideous layout. Kind of the game is my like quote unquote pencils, and then the inks on top. And like as you can see here, it's like this is a very, very rough. All the rest of it's just like extremely rough.
Yeah, it's so cool. I love seeing this stuff. I'm a process nerd about this.
Same. I love like while I'm drawing, I'm basically like listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos about creators. So but only a couple more pages, and like it ends on this big cliffhanger of like the comet hitting and like to be continued. And like my goal is like issue 1 ends with the comet hitting. Issue 2, they get into space. When it is, hopefully one day published, that'll be the big, juicy, mega first issue.
Nice. Looks great, man. It really does.
Thanks so much.
Love it. So, all right. So you're getting pretty close to the end of the issue.
Yeah.
And then what's the plan from there? Where are you going with this? Where do people? I guess how do people get it, and where does it go?
So I mean, that's kind of the next step. I mean, we were talking a while back about I would love to continue that conversation, see what happens.
I was hoping that was going to be the answer, but
I would love that. We are going to start pitching it to just to anyone who I can pitch it to, and just kind of see what happens. I don't have like a concrete answer for that yet. I just want it to be out there. I want people to read it. Ideally, hopefully get paid so that we can keep bringing a little revenue in and keep that going. And like my whole thought is like, because the eventual goal is animation, like I think, especially with the conversations I've had with some people who work in comics, they're like, oh, so is this just like a means to an end to you? And it's like, No, it's like I feel like it's tiny.
That's right.
Like you know, I say because I stream twice a week, and I say this a lot. It's like I feel like this is a way in the current media landscape. It's like we are making a comic is like, you know, you are Thanos with your Infinity Gauntlet, like snapping a pre-existing IP into exist. Like, you know, it's like you have the will to create this, and it's like the reality of the entertainment landscape, and like kind of what we were talking about Cartoon Network early on. It's like they are only interested in IP stuff,
Right.
and like having an IP sets you ahead, but like having an IP is not enough. It has to be good. You know, fans are, anyone who reads comics can see, like, immediately be like, this is a soulless product meant to create a TV show, or this is made by someone with passion. So it's like,
yeah.
That's a very long answer to your question, but
No,
I'm not even really answering it, but like,
no, it's a perfect answer. Yeah. I mean, I could not be more aligned. I mean, this is the thing we talk about all the time, which is that it's like, you know, I think we need to stop being embarrassed about the fact that, like, yeah, I want this to be an animated series. Like, you know, everything we're making is intended to become more than just the first expression of it. But that doesn't mean that the love and care and attention of crafting something that works in this medium, that is meant for this medium, is not also true. So I think you can have, you know, you can absolutely go like, yeah, this is me demonstrating my ability to tell a story, to create a world, to, you know, tell a compelling, you know, arc of something that that people care about these characters and get invested in it and want to play in this universe with me. And wouldn't it be awesome when it's an animated series and we can watch it together? Like,
exactly. And like, and like, for me, it's like all of that stuff is so true and so important, but it's like with comics, especially, it's like I was working at Cartoon Network, and like the amount of executive notes we would get is truly mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And then to come into comics where it's like, if you can write it and draw it, like I'm writing, like I had to rewrite it halfway through. I was like, I can make this so much more awesome than they ever would have made me make it they would have let me make it as an animation. And like, and then once that exists as a comic, and if it's successful, it's like, then you have the power to like fight back against animation executives and be like, no, it's like, this is what people want it to be. Like, we have proof that this is what people want it to be. So I mean, there's a lot of power and freedom.
There is also a reality to it's like, you know, we were talking about kind of the stepping, you know, I guess the stepping stones or the ladder, you know, through traditional, you know, kind of rising through the ranks in animation or other things. It's like, you know, there is some real validity to also just having something that you fully control and own. And, you know, even if, you know, it's like, so, you know, I mentioned my friends who went to college with who created Avatar. It's like, you know, that's amazing, and it's become this huge franchise, and they still got kicked off of the live action series at Netflix. Like, there's a flip side to all these things, and so I think, to me, that's what's so empowering about comics, really, out of everything across media. And I guess, you know, you could say, you know, comics and narrative podcasts are now kind of the two, you know, things that people are mining for IP at a fever, you know, pace. But, you know, in both cases, you have the potential to kind of really create your own thing and have very much a singular vision, and, you know, make something that is truly the expression of the idea that you want to communicate. And then if it becomes something more, you know, you hear authors talk about this. I think, you know, authors that have a good perspective on this, where it's like, yeah, it may become this huge movie, and on some level, I already got to make the thing I wanted to make. And so, it's interesting, kind of double-edged sword to that, of like, on the one hand, like, this is a way for me to have more control. On the other hand, there's also a perspective which is like, okay, but also, like, if I give up a little bit of caring, you know, is this bigger thing, does it have to be kind of 100%, you know, or do I kind of get my chance to go like, this is my undistilled vision, and now maybe I'm a little more willing to compromise because of production necessities or whatever. And there's no right answer there. I just think it's an interesting kind of spectrum to.
There is, in like, yeah, that's a really great point, and like, I definitely consider myself like a student of the people who came before me, and like, it's interesting you bring up the Avatar guys, because like I've listened to a lot of podcasts and stuff from them where they talk about this stuff, and like it's truly mind-boggling. Like fairly recently, I forget if it was Michael or Brian, they were saying like basically the deal we got back in 2001 or 1999 or whatever it is, it's like that's kind of the deal we still have.
Yeah.
So they're like, be careful.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was very eye-opening to me. I was like, so, to tie it back to making this comic, I was like, let me not rush. Like, let me, like, we are doing all this stuff to build a comic, to build an IP, and like, let me kind of use their experience as like a roadmap of what to do. And like, it's one of the Adventure Time guys who now has his own project, his own NFT project, Jesse Moynihan. He's like, he's been screwed over by the industry so many times, and like he's like, it always comes back to comics, and like that is his pure unfiltered vision. Exactly what you're saying. It's like whatever this one day might become, he's done this like very pure creative thing. It's like there's so much truth to that, and it's such like it's a great. Yeah, I'm lucky to be here doing the same thing. So
yeah. It's awesome. Well, as we start to head towards wrapping up, I think, for people that maybe aren't yet in the Web3 space and are interested in the comic side of things, I think one of the things we've run into, obviously, a lot of people that are skeptical about the space. There's a kind of, I'd say, vocal minority to a degree that is, completely anti, NFT. And, I think largely, I think everyone's perspective is valid, but I think many people just haven't taken the time to fully understand kind of what the implications of this are, and they're kind of hung up on the negative stories that have kind of come out in the news or the speculative side of it, and all that stuff is true. But I think the thing I'd love, if you don't mind sharing some of this, is that you did have a successful mint and generated a pretty decent amount of revenue at that mint. And so I think when you're looking through the lens of, you could have done this exact same thing through Kickstarter or, other ways of, funding the project. But I would argue that, the chances of generating the kind of revenue that you were able to bring in through this, the ability to incentivize a community and a fan base to have a stake in what you're building, to give them the potential to realize long-term value by being a participant in that. Like, it's night and day of like, what the other ways of going about this, would have been.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of hit it exactly the nail on the head. It's like Kickstarter can be a legitimate route, but I've seen so many projects and like the difficulties they have, and it's like that's such a difficult model. That's not, in my opinion, that's not the way to make a comic.
I mean, one of our creators, Jason Brubaker, he was a concept artist at DreamWorks and worked on the Kung Fu Panda movies, and was early to webcomics, early to Kickstarter, now early to NFTs as we build out this stuff with him. But I think he's been one of those people that has been able to successfully fund every project that he's done on Kickstarter. It's a real model that works for him. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in funding for his projects. But it's that is a very small percentage of creators on Kickstarter. And I think the flip side of that, to me, and what makes this space so exciting to me as a creator, as a making this platform, kind of what we're trying to provide to other creators, is that that same possible funding mechanic can be there, but you get all this other stuff that comes along with it. Just at a very basic level, you got a bunch of people that have collected now characters in this universe, and that creates another canvas to play on with all kinds of ways that could go over time. But at the very least, just imagine like this does become a successful comic, and then it becomes a successful animated series. And I do believe that the people that participated the earliest by collecting these characters and being a part of the project and being your super fans and your supporters, that if this becomes anything meaningful, like there will be some value that goes and accrues back to those people. And that doesn't even necessarily mean that there's value from the project. It just means you got your early copy of a Mickey Mouse trading card before Mickey Mouse was a worldwide phenomenon. And it's like that's not going to happen for every project, but the ones that you like and believe in. And I think this is just a way of giving, like you might get a trading card from a Kickstarter campaign. That thing is never going to be worth more than what it was just because it's cool. It's just very unlikely. So, and I think that dynamic is just such a empowering part of all this to me.
Yeah, and I mean, this is where we kind of get into the hypothetical range, but like, I'm very realistic about the realities of the project, and like, I do want to create value for the people who who did Mint and who were these like day one fans, and like I'm doing everything in my power to do that. But kind of like you say, it's like there is an element of we don't know what's going to happen, and hopefully they are getting something rewarding out of the process beyond that. We are actively working to do that as well. Always working to actively do that as well. And like we made, like, let me actually pull up a picture really quick.
Well, and while you're doing that, I mean, when I like to put it in the context with all these conversations where it's like we talk about value. It doesn't necessarily mean monetary value. We hope there is monetary value as well, but it's really about being able to be involved in something in a way that in many ways that is really challenging to do in a different paradigm. And I think as a fan of things myself, like it's part of what makes me excited is like I want to be in this on both sides of this equation.
I think it's so amazing, and this is what really frustrates me the most about like the public perception, especially like animation. Twitter is like super anti NFT, and like everything we've been talking about today about like how crazy the animation industry is, especially now. It's like I see it on Twitter every single day. They're like people shaking their fists at the corporations, like, how can they do this? There has to be another way. And I'm like, there's a way to support the creators you like and actually like pay them enough that they can prioritize this stuff and like actually do it. Because like I always say, like on our streams, it's like one of the biggest privileges of being in this space and like making this money is like it's the ability to buy time. And like I was doing this stuff in my own time while working in animation before this, and I would do it for free, which is like if you do it for free you'll do it for money, but it's like you can't prioritize it the same way when you're doing it for free. And like by making this money, it's like we've now basically funded our own incubation development time, or like that's just like absolutely supercharged this project in a way that almost would have been impossible otherwise. And like so when we do eventually go into the production pipeline for animation, it's like I talk about this a lot, is like I wish we would have had the dream scenario of it like being greenlit day one, but it's like in a certain way we're actually lucky that it didn't, because we got this supercharged development thing. Because like the second you go into development on a TV show, that train has left the station and it does not stop until it's done. And it's like you hear the Avatar guys, they're just like, we just want it to be done. Like we just want, you're like hoping you can hold it together until the end. And I'm like, we have built such an incredibly strong foundation. And like I consider myself so lucky to have gotten to be able to do that and like really like iterate and build and like create something really that I think is special and will resonate with people. And like I really hope
Well, you can see it in the work, man. It's like the love and the craft is 100% there, so it's no question.
Thanks so much. Let me show this really quick. Like what I was saying about like building value, and like we have created this like super high quality Ziggy plush that like this stuff. It's easy to think as a fan and like not think about like, oh, it's like all projects create plushes. It's like that's just a thing that people do, and it's like when you're doing it yourself, it's like it's extremely expensive. And it's like being able to do that like absolutely would have been impossible pre being in Web3 and pre like having this money. And it's like what I was saying about the dino eggs, and like this is available. It's not quite yet available, but it's going to be available one day soon for fans, like completely free. And it's like I hope
awesome.
The value for them is real. And it's like I actually have one. Let me grab it. It's right behind me. You can see it. Like
it's gorgeous. You're about to have 1,000 in your garage, apparently.
Like this is,
wow, he's big too. He's awesome.
Machine level quality, like extremely high. Because I used to work at a plushie company, and like I have this experience that I was able to bring into building this, and it's like this is a very real.
That's amazing. Now, I think the fact you just put that in front of you by the camera, I think every interview you do from here forward needs to be this.
Right here.
And then occasionally you can be like, what do you think, Ziggy? Yeah, that's awesome.
And like exactly what you're saying is like, this is the thing that they will hopefully, I hope on top of like creating value for our project, like through the NFTs and all this, but like I hope also it's like maybe there will be some amount of value for like getting the first Ziggy plush or like whatever it is, So like thinking about all that stuff. But
well, I think that's a great. I mean, maybe a good place to kind of start to wrap up is I think that to me is what I think is so interesting is like you do have to. I would say we have to do all the not financial advice, do your own research, kinds of disclaimers about all this stuff. But I think you have to evaluate projects and people that you want to get involved with, and I think it seems very clear to me in talking to you before this and today. I hope people feel this about me and what we're building, that it's like we don't have a crystal ball to know like exactly what is this all going to look like over the next year, but the ethos, the intent, the plan is to continually find ways to give more back to the people that have been the most supportive, that have participated in this process. And the thing that the blockchain uniquely enables us to do is to actually do that seamlessly and easily in a way that is transparent, in a way that is, effective, in a way that isn't like, hey, if you saw an email that might have ended up in your spam, folder and, filled out this form online, maybe I could give you something, it's a very direct way of going like, the more you participate, the more we're able to collectively make this thing successful, the more ability that we're going to have to be able to, give back to the community and involve the community. And, I think that is such a kind of special just ability based on the technology that kind of runs under the hood.
Yeah. And I'm super excited to see where that goes in the future too, especially with comics.
Yeah.
I think that could maybe really change a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole conversation to be had about the comics industry, which is its own broken animal. But that's one of my soapboxes for sure. All right, but Matt, where should people find you and get engaged with you if they like the look of Dino Babies? How can they get involved in Dino?
I mean, follow us, Dino Babies NFT on Twitter. I'm Dino Baby Matt on Twitter. There's the link to the Discord. Still it's still pretty active. Hop on there. And then every Tuesday night and Saturday morning, I do a stream. And for the last month or whatever, it's been purely drawing and coloring this comic. So if anyone out there like is also a process nerd and wants to get really into the nitty gritty, We're doing it. So
that's awesome. Well, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat today, and it's exciting for me to see. I mean, when we talked a few months ago, I think you were at the very beginning of the process, so it's very
yeah. It's like,
yeah. And
okay.
again, gorgeous work. I mean, I like to say, whether or not this was a Web3 NFT project, I mean, this is kind of my bars. Like, if it's, whether it was this or it was a traditional comic or Kickstarter or, something else, it's like, I'm into it. It looks great. And I love
it so much.
I love the story. So the fact that it's, in these two worlds together, just for me is even more exciting. So it's very, very cool.
I mean, that means a lot. And like, just to kind of like my final thoughts on like how Web3 and all this plays into it is like, having been in the, like, not in the comics industry as much, but just being a comics super fan for a long time, and then working in the animation industry for a long time, being a creator in that space, it's like, it feels like you have to like beg. And like, there's just this huge barrier to entry, slightly less so in comics, but like still this huge barrier. And it's like, it kind of feels like that's been broken down a lot.
Yeah. Well, there's more ways to make stuff, which is,
and like, for it to be a reality, it's like, if you're not in the big two, or maybe within the last decade, image, like making money in comics is like, it's challenging. It's impossible. It's like, that's not a good, that's why I have this whole soapbox, and we don't, I know we're trying to wrap up, but like, I feel like my generation of creators isn't making comics. And that's the reason. It's like, it's impossible to make money in. And everyone goes into animation, and it's like, it's a much more anonymous creative field. Whereas like the generation before me, we have all these legendary comics creators, and it's like, because it was a different time, and you could actually like make a career in it. And maybe this is me looking at it with rose-tinted glasses, but like, I'm hoping that dynamic is starting to shift, and like, this is a huge part of that.
Well, you opened this can of worms, so I'm gonna say a little bit about that too. I mean, I think the comics industry has been challenged for a very long time. Going back to like $15 page rates in the beginning. You see, it's like, the reason Jack Kirby was so prolific was not necessarily because he wanted to be, is because that's how he could pay his bills. Like, doing 6 pages a day was like what it took to put food on the table, which is unbelievable in and of itself. But this has been, it has been an art form that's been so influential, especially over the past couple of decades, and more so every day. I mean, there are literally 40 something television shows on the air right now that are all based on comics and graphic novels, and that's way beyond just the Marvel and DC stuff, which people recognize. So I think it's a weird dichotomy, because on the one hand, you've never had more independent creators become massively successful, and Robert Kirkman, we're looking at you. But on the other hand, it's still so challenging to be an independent publisher in particular. And so this is why things like Kickstarter and Patreon and now Web3 and NFTs have been so important for people to be able to make personal work and find an audience for it. But there's still this very strange value proposition between, building something that people resonate with. We've been conditioned by social media and kind of the culture that has developed over the creator economy that has developed over the past, decade, where, Webtoons has become by far and away the biggest, comics publishing platform, by far the biggest audience on the planet. And yet, we have friends that have series on Webtoons that have hundreds of thousands of readers and are making okay money, but it's 100,000 copies in print would be real money. It's still kind of like, headbutting against like, how do you create these things which have tremendous cultural value, have the potential to spawn billions of dollars in revenue and franchises that do grow. And I think on the just off camera.
Yeah, it's like you talking.
So all that is just to say, having other options is only good, and I think that our goal as Macroverse, and I know most of us that are kind of making things in this new way, is to find ways to really create a value proposition that really truly rewards the effort and the time and the creative energy that it takes to build these things from ground zero, and then in success bring everyone along for the ride that has helped support that process. And that to me is like the missing piece in all of this is, you've got those 100,000 people that are reading something on Webtoons, and maybe they're, a handful of them are tipping their, $5 or whatever because they like it. But even the majority of that is not going to the creators. The Fast Pass subscriptions, most of it's going to the company, not to the creators. And so, just being able to kind of equalize these things in a way where the people that are actually making the stuff that you love get to reap the rewards of that when it becomes successful. That's what this is all about.
It's a revolutionary idea, but
it's a crazy revolutionary idea. We're both being locked up right after we get off this stream. But maybe that's a good place to pause. So Matt, again, I really appreciate you coming on. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Awesome. So, thanks for doing this.
Again, where's the Twitters for you and for Dino Babies?
At Dino Babies NFT. Yeah.
Okay.
Or Dino Baby Matt. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's the place to go.
And you'll find me at DinoVERSE just about everywhere, and Macroverse HQ just about everywhere. And when we go offline, we're going to talk a little bit more about perhaps secret team up. Later. Awesome. All right, everybody. Well, if you're watching this now or later, wherever you are, have a great day, and more to come.